What are some of the issues under Australian law for hosting data that's relevant to Australian people overseas?
Yeah, but that's the other side of the coin. On the one hand, you're subject to foreign laws when you put your data in foreign countries. In Australia, there are a lot of pieces of legislation around data retention and document retention, and that might be things from the Australian Taxation Act to the Corporations Law or the Privacy Law. They all relate to the amount of data you have to keep, the length of time you have to keep it, where you have to keep it. The biggest issue that we're seeing come up for companies is companies that collect data about Australian citizens, which is data that falls under the Privacy Act. That might be data that identifies Australians, and there are issues around transport of data flow under existing privacy legislation. There's also an exposure draft out now of the new Australian privacy principles, and there's a new Australian privacy principle number 8 that's being discussed at the moment. Now, if an Australian company puts its consumer data, its private data into the cloud, it has to make sure that the company it puts it with has adequate safeguards, the equivalent of the Australian privacy principles, in place. Okay. If it doesn't take those steps to make sure that this company is going to look after the data in the same way, then, and there's a breach, the Australian company under the exposure draft will be liable for the breach. And that's a new development that goes a lot further than existing Australian privacy principles.